Lena Thompson sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of warm coffee that had already gone cold. The house was quiet now, the kids were asleep, and only the soft ticking of the clock filled the space. She looked at the photos hanging on the wall, family trips, birthday smiles. It's their wedding day, reminders of a love that once felt effortless. But lately, it had changed. Something between her and Mark had faded, slowly and silently. It's like a flame running out of air. It wasn't that they stopped loving each other. It was just. Mark worked long hours at his job in downtown Seattle, coming home tired and distracted. Lena managed the house, the kids, the bills, everything that made their world run smoothly. Their days had become predictable. Breakfast, work, dinner, sleep, and repeat. What used to be laughter-filled evenings had turned into quiet nights in front of the television, each of them lost in their own thoughts. Lena often found herself missing the man she married. The one who used to surprise her with flowers, who danced with her in the kitchen, who looked at her like she was the only person in the world. Now he barely looked at her at all. When their eyes did meet, there was a flicker of something distant. Like two people remembering what they once had but unsure how to get it back. She tried to fix it in small ways, leaving little notes in his lunchbox, making his favorite dinner, asking about his day with genuine interest. But his answers were always short. It was fine, just busy, I'm tired. Those 3 phrases had become their new language, and it broke her heart. That evening, as she cleared the dinner table, she heard Mark walk into the room. He paused for a moment, watching her. "Lena," he said softly. His voice carried a tone she hadn't heard in a while, uncertain but gentle. She turned to him, wiping her hands on a dish towel, trying to read his expression. "Yes," she asked. He hesitated, as if searching for the right words. "Can we talk?" Her heart skipped a beat. Those 3 words always made her nervous. She nodded, and they sat down across from each other. The air felt thick, filled with unspoken things. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Mark finally said, "I feel like we're losing something." Lena's throat tightened. "I know," she whispered. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I don't want to wake up one day and realize we became strangers. I've been thinking about us, about how things used to be." There was a flicker of hope in her chest. Maybe he felt it too. Maybe this was the start of something new. He leaned forward, his eyes soft. "I have an idea," he said. "Something that might help us remember who we are together." Lena tilted her head. "What kind of idea?" Mark smiled, a small nervous smile that reminded her of the man she met years ago. "It might sound silly, but I think we need a night that's just about us. No kids, no phones, no distractions. Just you and me." She raised an eyebrow. "Like a date night." He shook his head. "Not exactly. I want us to start over. To meet again like strangers." Lena blinked. The idea caught her off guard. "Strangers," she repeated, half laughing. He nodded. "You'll walk into a place, maybe a bar, maybe a cafe. I'll already be there. You'll see me sitting alone. And we'll pretend we don't know each other. We'll start fresh. You'll tell me your name, I'll tell you mine. We'll talk like we did the first time we met." Lena stared at him, unsure if he was serious. But there was something in his expression, a mix of sincerity and hope. "He wasn't joking, Mark," she said softly. "That's unexpected." He smiled again, this time with more confidence. "That's the point. We need something unexpected. We need to remember what it felt like to fall in love, not to live like roommates." His words hit her heart. She'd been feeling the same but didn't know how to say it. For the first time in months, she saw the spark in his eyes, that same spark that had drawn her to him years ago. "Okay," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let's do it." Arcs. Shoulders relaxed with relief. "Tomorrow night," he said. "I'll text you the place. Don't be late, stranger." Lena smiled for real this time. "We'll see if you're worth my time," she teased. That night, as she lay in bed, she couldn't sleep. Her mind kept replaying the conversation. Part of her thought it was silly, pretending to be strangers after 12 years of marriage. But another part of her felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Excitement. She looked over at Mark. already asleep beside her. His face looked peaceful in the dim light, the same face she had fallen for so many years ago. For a moment, she imagined what it would be like to meet him all over again, to feel that spark of curiosity, the nervous laughter, the thrill of the unknown. As the night grew quieter, a small smile touched her lips. Maybe this was exactly what they needed. A chance to fall in love again, not through grand gestures or fancy trips, but through something simple. When morning came, Lena woke up before everyone else. She made coffee and looked out the kitchen window at the pale Seattle sky. For the first time in a long while, she felt hope stirring in her chest. She didn't know what tomorrow night would bring, but she was ready to find out. She thought about the last time she felt truly alive with Mark, their 10th anniversary trip to Portland. They had laughed nonstop, gotten lost downtown, and ended up dancing in the rain. She wanted that again. Maybe his idea would bring it back. As Mark left for work, Key kissed her on the cheek. A small, simple gesture, but it lingered. She watched him go, realizing how long it had been since she'd felt butterflies from something so ordinary. When she closed the door behind him, she whispered to herself, "Tomorrow night, I'll meet him again, and for the first time in months." Lena felt like their love story wasn't fading, it was beginning again, just in a different way. Little did she know, Mark's idea would not only bring back the spark they'd lost, but also open a door to truths and emotions they had both been afraid to face. It wouldn't be easy, but maybe, just maybe, it would be the start of something even stronger than before, a love that had been tested, bruised, and yet still alive. That night, Lena fell asleep with a calm smile and a heart quietly ready for what was to come. Tomorrow, she wouldn't just meet her husband, she'd meet him all over again. The next evening arrived faster than Lena expected. All day she had felt a quiet rush of nerves running through her, between taking care of the kids, answering calls, and finishing dinner. Her mind kept drifting back to Mark's words, "We'll start fresh." Sounded crazy, but somehow it made her heart beat faster. She hadn't felt this kind of excitement in years. When the house finally grew quiet, Lena went upstairs to get ready. She opened her closet and stared at her clothes, trying to decide what to wear. It felt strange dressing up for her own husband, pretending he was someone new. After a moment, she picked a simple black dress, the same one she wore on their 5th anniversary before life got too busy. She fixed her hair, added a soft touch of perfume, and stood in front of the mirror. The woman staring back at her looked nervous but hopeful. She hadn't seen that version of herself in a long time. Mark had texted her the address. Earlier, a small bar in downtown Seattle they used to visit when they were dating. The place was quiet, warm, and filled with soft music. It had been years since she last walked in there. As she drove through the glowing city lights, she couldn't help but smile. It felt like she was going on a first date, not meeting her husband of 12 years. When she arrived, she paused at the door for a moment, taking a deep breath before stepping inside. The bar was softly lit, filled with the gentle hum of conversations and the faint sound of a piano playing. Then she saw him. Mark was sitting at the counter, wearing a white shirt and a navy jacket, simple, clean, and confident. He looked like a man waiting for someone special. When he turned and saw her, his smile wasn't the polite kind she had grown used to at home. It was genuine, warm, and just a little nervous. For a brief moment, Lena felt her heart flutter. She walked toward him slowly, pretending not to know him. He stood up slightly, still playing along, and said, "Is this seat taken?" Lena smiled and shook her head. "No, but it might depend on who's asking." Kade chuckled softly. "Mark," he said, extending his hand. "Nice to meet you, Lena." She replied, shaking his hand. "Nice to meet you too." They both laughed quietly, the awkwardness melting away as they settled into their roles. It was strange but fun, like they were acting in a small, private play. Mark ordered 2 drinks, sparkling water with lemon, her favorite. She raised an eyebrow. "You seem to know what I like." He grinned. "Just a lucky guess." They began talking not about the kids, the bills, or work, but about life, dreams, and little things that didn't matter yet somehow meant everything. He asked her what she did for a living, and she pretended to be a writer working on her first book. He said he was a photographer who traveled for work. Their stories were playful lies, but each word pulled them closer, reminding them of who they were before routine took over. At one point, Lena laughed so hard she had to wipe away a tear. Mark just looked at her, quietly smiling. There was something in his eyes she hadn't seen in years, admiration, as the night went on. They forgot they were playing a game. Their laughter turned into soft glances, their small talk into meaningful words. The noise of the bar faded, and it felt like the world had narrowed to just the two of them. Mark leaned closer. "You know, you remind me of someone I used to know," he said with a teasing tone. "Is that so?" she asked, playing along. He nodded. "Yeah." She had the same laugh, the same spark in her eyes. "But I lost touch with her somewhere along the way." Lena's smile faded slightly, touched by the weight behind his words. "Maybe she's been waiting for you to find her again," she said quietly. Their eyes met, and for a few seconds neither spoke. It wasn't awkward. It was real. Later, as soft music played, Mark stood and held out his hand. "Dance with me?" Lena hesitated, looking around. "Here, now." "Why not?" he said with that same confident smile she remembered from their early days. She took his hand, and he guided her to a small open space near the corner. The music wasn't fast or dramatic, just a slow tune filled with warmth. He wrapped his arms around her gently, and she rested her head on his chest. They moved together in quiet rhythm, as if their bodies remembered something their minds had forgotten. For the first time in years, Lena didn't feel the weight of time between them. She felt safe, loved, seen. When the song ended, they stayed close for a moment longer before Mark whispered, "You still take my breath away." Lena smiled softly. "You don't sound like a stranger anymore." He chuckled. "Maybe I never was." As they sat back down, Lena noticed how different everything felt. The distance between them wasn't gone completely, but it was shrinking. For the first time in months, she saw the man she had fallen in love with. Not the tired version who came home late, but the man who used to make her feel like the only woman in the world. They talked until the bar began to close. Neither of them wanted to leave. As they stepped outside, the cool night air brushed against them. The city lights reflected in puddles on the sidewalk, and everything felt calm. Mark walked beside her, hands in his pockets. "Thank you for coming tonight," he said softly. "Thank you for asking," she replied. He smiled. "You know, I almost didn't." Lena turned to him, curious. "Why not?" He hesitated, his eyes drifting toward the streetlights. "Because I wasn't sure if you still wanted to try." Her heart softened. "Mark, I've always wanted to try. I just didn't know how." He nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. Then he took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, his voice suddenly serious. Lena felt her stomach tighten. The warmth of the night seemed to shift. "What is it?" she asked carefully. Mark looked down, his hands trembling slightly. "Not here," he said. "Let's talk in the car." Something about his tone made her heart race. The evening had been light and full of laughter, but now there was something deeper, heavier, waiting between them. She didn't know what he was going to say, but she knew it would change everything. As they walked toward the car in silence, Lena glanced at him from the corner of her eye. His face looked calm, but his jaw was tight. For a moment, fear crept in. Was this night just a setup for something else? The drive home was quiet. The city lights flickered across the windshield as neither of them spoke. Lena's mind spun with questions, but she stayed silent, waiting. When they parked in front of their house, Mark turned off the engine but didn't move. He just sat there staring at the steering wheel, his breath unsteady. "Mark," she whispered, her voice shaking slightly. "What is it?" He finally looked at her, his eyes full of guilt and something softer regret. "Lena," he said quietly, "I need to tell you the truth about what's been on my mind these past months." And with those words, the night that had begun as a playful idea suddenly turned into something far more serious. A turning point neither of them expected. The car was silent as Mark sat gripping the steering wheel. The glow from the streetlight outside painted soft shadows across his face. Lena waited, her heart pounding. The warmth and laughter from earlier felt distant now. Something in his eyes told her that whatever he was about to say wasn't small. Finally, he turned toward her. "Lena," he began quietly, "I need to be honest with you. A few months ago, I almost made a terrible mistake." Her chest tightened. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. He took a deep breath. "There's someone at work, her name's Claire. We started talking, just friendly at first. But then I noticed I was looking forward to those talks more than I should have. Nothing happened, but it could have. And that scared me. I stopped it before it went anywhere, but I hated myself for even letting it get that far." For a moment, Lena couldn't speak. Her throat felt dry, her hands cold. The word almost echoed in her head. It wasn't a betrayal, but it felt dangerously close. She stared out the window, her mind spinning between hurt and confusion. Mark continued, his voice full of regret. "That's why I planned tonight. I wanted to remind myself and you why we started. Why we're still together. I needed to feel that connection again. I needed to earn back what I was losing." Lena turned slowly to face him. His eyes weren't defensive or distant. They were tired of guilt, tired of pretending everything was fine. And that made it harder to stay angry. She took a shaky breath. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I was ashamed," he admitted. "You've always trusted me. I didn't want to destroy that. But tonight, when I saw you walk into that bar, it reminded me who I really love, and I couldn't hide the truth anymore." Lena leaned back in her seat, staring at him for a long moment. She felt a wave of sadness, but beneath it, a flicker of relief. He hadn't cheated. He almost had. And instead of lying, he came clean. That mattered. It didn't erase the pain, but it made forgiveness possible. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say whatever you need to," Mark said gently, "even if it hurts." Her voice broke slightly as she spoke. "It does hurt, because I thought I was the only one who missed us. I didn't know you were fighting the same emptiness." Mark nodded. "I was. Every day. I just didn't know how to fix it." They sat there in silence, the tension heavy but not unbearable. After a few minutes, Lena sighed and looked at him again. "You did the right thing, Mark, stopping it before it went too far. That's what matters now." He looked surprised. "You're not angry?" She gave a small, sad smile. "Of course I'm angry. But I'm also human. We both let things slip. I got lost in the routine, too. Maybe we both forgot how to be us." Mark reached out and took her hand carefully, like he wasn't sure she'd let him. "I don't want to lose what we have," he said softly. "Tonight reminded me how lucky I am that you're still here." Lena looked at their hands, fingers slowly intertwining, for the first time in a long while. She felt like they were being truly honest with each other. Raw, vulnerable, real. "Let's not run from this," she said after a pause. "Let's learn from it." He nodded. "I want that too." They sat quietly for a few more moments before Mark smiled weakly. "You know, even with everything I said, this was still the best night we've had in years." Lena let out a soft laugh, the kind that comes when tears are close. "You really think so?" "I do," he said firmly. "Because we were us again, even if it was just for a few hours." Her heart softened. The night had been filled with laughter, dancing and connection, and now truth. Painful, yes, but honest. Maybe that's what they'd been missing all along. "Let's not end the night like this," Lena said after a while. "Drive somewhere quiet. I'm not ready to go home yet." Mark nodded and started the car. They drove out of the city, following the road that led toward the waterfront. The sky was clear and the moonlight shimmered on the waves. When they parked near the edge, Lena stepped out and leaned against the hood of the car. Breathing in the cool air, Mark joined her. Neither spoke for a while. The gentle sound of the water seemed to say everything they couldn't. Finally, Lena broke the silence. "Do you remember our first trip here?" Mark smiled faintly. The picnic that got ruined by rain. She nodded, laughing softly. We sat in the car eating soggy sandwiches, but it didn't matter. We couldn't stop laughing. I remember thinking, he said, that if we could laugh through that, we could handle anything. Lena turned toward him, her voice quiet. Then let's prove that we still can. Mark met her eyes. You mean that? I do, she said. But I need you to promise me something. Anything. No more secrets, she said firmly. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's hard, we tell each other everything. Mark nodded. Deal. There was something beautiful in the simplicity of that promise. No grand speeches, no dramatic scenes, just two people choosing honesty over pride. They stood there for a while longer, side by side, watching the water move under the moonlight. The air between them felt different now, not heavy with distance, but light with possibility. Mark reached for her hand again. You know, he said softly, tonight didn't go the way I planned. Lena chuckled. You think? He smiled. But I'm glad it went this way. I didn't want to hide anymore. I just wanted us back. She looked at him, seeing not the man who had nearly drifted away, but the one who had found his way home. Maybe this is how we start over, she said gently. Not by pretending to be strangers, but by becoming honest ones. Mark's eyes softened. You always know how to make things sound right. Lena shrugged lightly. Maybe I just still believe in us. He took a deep breath and smiled. Then let's hold on to that. The night breeze brushed against them as they stood quietly, their fingers intertwined. In that moment, forgiveness wasn't a word, it was a choice, made silently but deeply. The wound was still there, but so was the love that had always held them together. When they finally drove home, Lena rested her head against the window, watching the streetlights pass. She felt lighter, not because everything was perfect again, but because they had faced the truth without breaking apart. As they pulled into the driveway, Mark turned to her. Thank you, he whispered. For what? She asked, for giving me another chance. Lena smiled softly. You didn't need another chance, Mark. You just needed to remember why you had one in the first place. He reached over, brushing his thumb against her hand. Then tonight reminded me. And for the first time in a long time, Lena believed him. That night, they walked inside together, not as two people pretending to be strangers, but as a husband and wife who had finally found the courage to fall in love again, with open hearts and no secrets left between them. The house was quiet when Lena and Mark walked inside. The lights were dim, and the air felt different, lighter, calmer, as if the walls themselves had exhaled. For the first time in months, there was no tension pressing between them. Lena placed her purse on the counter and turned toward him. Mark looked nervous again, unsure what to say after everything that had come out that night. But there was something gentle in his eyes, something she hadn't seen in a long time. Hope. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. The silence wasn't cold anymore. It was soft, filled with things that didn't need words. Lena finally broke it with a quiet voice. You told me the truth tonight, Mark. That means more than you think. He looked down, guilt still heavy in his tone. I just wish I'd never let it get that far. I almost lost the one thing that matters most. Lena walked closer, stopping right in front of him. You didn't lose me, she said softly. You almost did. But you stopped before it was too late and you told me the truth. That's what matters now. Mark exhaled slowly, relief washing over his face. I don't deserve you, he whispered. Maybe not, she said with a faint smile. But I still choose you. That one sentence broke something open between them. Mark pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as if he never wanted to let go. Lena rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. It felt safe, familiar, real. After a while, they sat together on the couch, still holding hands. The night outside was silent except for the soft sound of rain tapping against the windows. Lena leaned back, her head resting on Mark's shoulder. For a long time, they didn't speak. They just sat there breathing the same air, remembering the warmth that had always existed beneath the noise of everyday life. Finally, Lena said quietly, "Do you remember the first time you told me you loved me?" Mark smiled faintly. "At the lake. You made me wait an hour before you said it back." She laughed softly. "I wanted to be sure you meant it." "I did," he said, "and I still do." Lena turned to face him. His expression was open and honest, his eyes full of emotion. "Then let's promise to never forget that again," she whispered. "I promise," he said firmly. "No more hiding. No more pretending. If something's wrong, we talk about it. If we're drifting, we fix it together." Lena nodded. "Deal." They sat there for a long time, just talking, really talking, for the first time in years. They spoke about their fears, their mistakes, their hopes. They admitted how they had both changed, how they had stopped trying in small ways without realizing it. The honesty was painful at times, but it felt like healing. Mark confessed how he'd felt invisible, lost between work and family responsibilities. Lena admitted that she had built walls around her emotions, too afraid to seem needy or disappointed. They realized that neither had truly fallen out of love, they had just forgotten to show it. The rain outside grew heavier, tapping rhythmically against the glass. Mark got up and turned on some soft music, one of their old favorites. The melody filled the room, gentle and warm. He looked at Lena and extended his hand again, the same way he had at the bar. "Dance with me?" he asked. Lena smiled and stood. "Always." He wrapped his arms around her as they swayed slowly in the living room, the lights low, the rain echoing softly in the background. It wasn't a perfect dance, neither cared about the rhythm, but it felt perfect in its simplicity. Lena closed her eyes, letting herself sink into the moment. All the hurt, all the tension, all the fear seemed to fade away. What remained was love, steady, quiet, and strong. Mark's voice broke the silence. "You know what I realized tonight?" "What?" she whispered. "That love isn't about big moments or perfect days. It's about choosing each other, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." Lena smiled softly. "I think that's what makes it real." They danced for a long time, lost in the feeling of being close again. Every touch felt like a reminder of what they had almost lost and what they had fought to keep. It wasn't about forgetting the past, it was about forgiving it and moving forward, hand in hand. When the song ended, they stayed still, holding on to each other. Then Mark kissed her forehead gently. "You're my home, Lena," he said quietly. She looked up at him, eyes glistening. "And you're mine." They sat back down, leaning against each other, the exhaustion of the night catching up to them. But it wasn't the heavy kind of tired, it was peaceful, like their hearts had finally found rest. After a few minutes, Lena spoke softly. "You know, this really was your best idea." He chuckled. "The fake date." She nodded. "It brought us back to who we were. But the truth you told tonight, that's what brought us closer than ever." Mark looked at her with quiet gratitude. "Then maybe it wasn't just a date," he said. "Maybe it was our second beginning." Lena smiled. "I like that." As the rain slowed and the house fell completely silent, they stayed there together, no walls, no secrets. Just two people who had found their way back to love. It wasn't perfect, and it never would be, but it was real. And that was enough. Before going to bed, Mark took her hand and said softly, "Let's promise to keep having nights like this. Not the pretend kind, the real kind." Lena squeezed his hand. "Every night can't be perfect, but it can be honest. And that's what matters." He nodded. "Honest and together, always." As they turned off the lights and walked down the hallway, Lena glanced back at the living room, the place where so many quiet arguments had once lived, now filled with warmth again. She felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace, when they lay down in bed. Mark reached for her hand under the blanket. She smiled in the dark, feeling the quiet connection that had been missing for so long. "Good night, stranger," she whispered playfully. Mark chuckled softly. "Good night, my love." They fell asleep holding hands. The rain fading outside, leaving only the calm after the storm in the days that followed. Nothing magical happened, no grand gestures, no perfect fairy tale endings. But something inside them had shifted. They began leaving each other little notes again. They laughed over breakfast. They held hands during walks. The love was still imperfect, but it was alive. Lena realized that love doesn't stay strong on its own. It needs effort, truth, and forgiveness. And sometimes it takes one brave night to remember that. Months later, when friends asked how they managed to reconnect, Lena simply smiled and said, "It started with an idea. My husband's idea, and it turned into the best night we've ever had." And that night, their love story began again as a rewrite of the past, but as a new chapter built on honesty, forgiveness, and the quiet, beautiful power of choosing each other all over again.